Do we need a purpose? Does everyone have a purpose?
I think that's a great question, and I think that um, in younger days, and I think many might agree that sometimes we think the way that we think, and then we generalize our thinking out to the world, and we have a tendency to think that, well, doesn't everybody else think the way that I think? And that's I've certainly been victim to that as well. So when you say should everybody or does everybody have a purpose? I believe, from a spiritual standpoint, yes, that we're all built uniquely and beautifully and are really sent here to serve some kind of purpose. Although I have learned over the years, and in really digging into the Myers Briggs profiles outside of the NFers, and then have talked with several coaching clients in the past who really don't resonate with that at all. They don't really feel like they're drawn or pulled by a purpose. Or have any desire or need to think about it or plan around it. They just do what they do. They prepare, they live, they work, they may have families, and they just do what they do. And they don't necessarily feel a need or driven by a sense of purpose. Um, that's very much different. Well, let me just stop there for a moment.
Well, I'm curious about this because I have had phases of my life where I felt like I've had a purpose, and I've had phases where I was just kind of searching for what my purpose was gonna be in this phase of my life. And what I know for sure is when I lose purpose, I also lose motivation. So I'm wondering, I is that the case for most NFers? And, like, are those 2 usually coupled together, or are some people highly motivated, but also claim that they don't believe in purpose?
I'm not sure I could fully answer that question without bringing some other folks on the show to really kind of toss in their 2 cents worth. But my sense is that most, if not all, NFers really need to be living a purpose, their purpose in life, and that not doing so generally gives them even just a general sense of malaise, or just not having a direction, and loss of motivation, confusion, kind of feeling lost in the world. And I find that sometimes the case with folks across an age range of being an intuitive feeler, but oftentimes for folks that are younger, maybe even more so, where they got a sense that they're supposed to be working towards a bigger purpose in life, but they really have some confusion about what that is, have difficulty getting really aligned with that.
I feel like purpose and feeling content or lack of content, being discontent is, I feel like these things are related in a way that I have a hard time separating them, but I also can't really put them in nice, neat categories. So, there's something about having a purpose that makes you feel kind of more content with, the work that you're doing, the progress that you're making, but I have also reframed the way that I think of discontent. And I think that I think about discontent in a slightly more unorthodox way these days. So I'm curious, before I throw this out there, I'm curious what your views are on being discontent versus being content. If it's a, if we should make it a goal to strive to become content, how much discontent we should expect to have in our lives. What are your thoughts around that?
Well, several things come to mind, and of course, you can't tease like that and not give the rest of the goods. So we're going to have to get back to you so that you can share a little bit more about your experience. But I think that uh, there's several things that cross my mind. One is that again the confusion sometimes folks feel around defining or really discovering their purpose. I think that's a big area of discontent for some folks. Other times we briefly touched on this in the last podcast episode. I think other times folks that are built like an NFer is built oftentimes have a varied number of interests or passions and then often gets some confusion or struggle between knowing which one to focus on or how to distill 4 or 6 passions down into the intersection point, which might be able to then provide income for a living or for a family and those kinds of things. And I think that there's a lot of thoughts that come to my mind. Another thought that comes to my mind is that with those varied purposes, we can get distracted, and so sometimes when I'm on purpose, in my purpose, living my purpose, when I'm clear about my purpose, there's a sense of peace and serenity that comes with that, and that could be sometimes elusive for folks that have those varied interests. When I get off topic or I get attracted to something else that I find fascinating or interesting, that's all well and good. But if it pulls me too much off my current focus, my passion, and my purpose, then I can become even discontent or frustrated or overwhelmed as well. So, what are some of your thoughts about that?
Well, it's interesting because I used to think of discontent, and I think that this kind of couples with the way that I view pain and discomfort in general. So I used to think that discontent was something that was like a curse that I had because I'm sort of more discontent by nature. I don't usually feel very satisfied. I usually feel like something needs to improve or, I need to be working towards something. And I sort of feel like it's I sort of embrace discontent, and I sort of feel like people like me, I believe our purpose is to move things along. And I think that it's that discontent that I feel that I have begun to reframe discontent as drive. And when you think of discontent as drive, it's not this annoying thing that's a problem. When it's a problem, you do something to get rid of it. You medicate, you use substances, you try to hide from whatever it is, you try to distract yourself. But I no longer try to avoid it. I try to harness it. I try to point it. I try to give it a productive outlet. So I just think I think that that's a little bit different. I think that most people want to get rid of it. And I'm trying my very best to make friends with it.
Yeah. I think that you may be farther along in the process than some people. And I think that's fantastic for you. You've learned to, if I got you right, you've learned to use discontent or to harness it, as you said, harness the energy around discontent to really move you in the right next direction, as you said, to keep things moving along. And I love that. Um,
I think that movement is key.
mm,
I think that if you have discontent and you don't discontent, we'll say discontent slash drive. I'm not sure if I want to fully commit to that, but if you have that in you and you're not moving towards something better, hopefully, I think that's where the majority of the trouble comes in. I think that that's where we start to feel uh, anxious, depressed. It's obviously not the only reason for those feelings, but I think there's something important about making progress, about the movement, with being able to reframe the discontent as drive. Because drive that's
mhm,
just bottled up. I mean, we have a border collie as a part of our family, and border collies they're meant to work. They're working animals. So and if you would take that dog that has this amazing drive and try to confine it, it starts manifesting all kinds of things like anxiety and like neurotic tendencies and stuff like that. So I think that it needs a direction. And and that's why I feel like it's also coupled with purpose. If you point it you have a lot better chances of being able to deal with it or view it as a positive thing. But if it doesn't have an outlet, it's really hard to reframe it as a positive thing because it just seems like it's driving you mad.
yeah, yeah. Well, this is going to dump some people on their heads. I think that a lot of folks that I've worked with over the years that come into or start to feel that discontent really feel that it's a pretty awful feeling, and unpleasant, uncomfortable. and we could add more words to that. But you've taken this and you've had this experience. Certainly, it's personal to you, and you've reframed it. You've reframed it as motivation. You've reframed it as drive. You've reframed it as a call that I need to be doing the next right thing. And what is that next right thing?
That's exactly right. When I viewed it as something negative, for one, I'm never really able to get rid of it totally. It's always sort of present, and I would do things like substance abuse because I didn't want to feel feeling, and I thought like, well, right, aren't we supposed to treat discomfort? Or if we're not feeling happy, aren't we supposed to like do something or take something to make ourselves happy? And you know, it's not too hard to see that if you're just somebody that lives with a certain level of discontent, and then you start taking things external to alleviate that discontent, you know where that road goes, and it
Mm,
doesn't go anywhere helpful. So, yeah, I think that there are a lot of things that are problematic with looking at it as a problem in and of itself. Now, it is a double-edged sword. It doesn't feel good. Like, it's the thing that makes you move. It's so you don't want it to be off the charts where it's not manageable. So I think the goal is to figure out a way to manage it, and then once it's within manageable ranges, give it an outlet, a productive outlet, an outlet that is meaningful and that feels right, and one might say, in alignment with your purpose.
yeah, yeah. Well, and that's reminiscent of other conversations that you and I have shared, just about the importance of and the potential behind pain. Discontent is a form of pain, right? It doesn't feel comfortable. And we live in a culture today, at least in the US, possibly in other cultures across the world too, where we want that immediate gratification. We want the answer right now. We want to make the pain go away, instead of letting ourselves sit in it long enough to learn from it, to be motivated by it, and to make that next good move.
I think that's really well said, Dave. I think that, it's Ray Dalio likes to say pain plus reflection equals, I think, progress or growth or something along those lines. And I think that that's accurate. The discontent is the pain. And then you reflect on that and you're like, well, why am I feeling discontent that's off the charts right now? Like,
Mhm.
I know that I kind of live with this, but why is it so high? And yeah, it could strictly be that you're a border collie and you're living in a one-bedroom, studio apartment, and you're just going mad. There's something that's, your life is out of alignment with who you are, and that you need to have some level of congruence. You need to have those things dialed in a little bit better so it brings that discontent down to, like a normal baseline and not something that's off the charts, but without that feeling and not something that's off the to get it to go away or yes, it is the pain that leads to the growth in some cases.
Tell me about what kind of an impact it's had on your quality of life overall, that you have taken something like discontent, which is, again, very common for us intuitive feelers, and reframed it in the way that you have. How has that reframing and then taking action on that reframe impacted your quality of life?
Oh, I don't even know where to start. I had mentioned earlier about substance abuse, so I've been sober for, like, 4 years now, and the impact that that's had has been, uh, that touches every area of your life, all of your relationships, your progress with your business or your work or whatever that you do, it touches every bit of it. And it was one of the things that helped me stay away from old behaviors because I wasn't trying to get rid of the feeling. I was just trying to harness the feeling and give it a direction. So, I mean, I think from that perspective, uh, that has had huge positive implications. Additionally, I think you do bigger things when you're not afraid of being uncomfortable. So if I were to, if you're going to pursue anything that is worthwhile or, anything that's really challenging, in the back of your mind that pursuing that is not going to be pleasant. If you're going to climb Mount Everest, that that's not going to be all pleasant.
Yes.
So I think that kind of accepting it allows you to do more important work, more challenging work, work that you otherwise would have avoided. So I think that
Mm,
that has a positive, um, I think that that has leads to growth. And in fact, one thing that I try to do, and I don't do this every day because it's really sneaky, but I try to wake up in the morning and set my agenda. So I'll write down the things that I'm going to achieve and, on a piece of paper. And then I like to follow the things that are most important versus most urgent. But I've also found that sometimes you have to transfer things over from one day to the next day because you didn't do it. And I start to notice that there's a little bit of fear that's tied to that.
mm,
So if I put the thing that I don't want to do as the first item on my list that must get done today, I also find that very, very helpful for moving things forward, and it actually relieves the discontent in some way because it's
mm.
all downhill from here once you get that thing out of the way. So that sort of answered your question, but it's a difficult question to answer because the ramifications of reframing that are they're everywhere. Like, it
Mhm.
has literally impacted every facet of my life.
Nice, nice. Yeah, and I like that last piece, that last example about do the hard things first, and it then has an impact on the rest of your day, doesn't it?
Yeah, and the thing is, uh, you can easily avoid that thing, and you avoid it in a way, uh, that you don't even realize you're doing it. Because you're just kind of subconsciously moving away from it, and you do other work. So you'll tell yourself, "Well, I was busy and productive all day. I didn't have time to get to that thing." But if you start prioritizing it and writing it at the top of a list and then let yourself know, like write something down like that's fear, that it's avoiding this getting done. Once you label it and you have to move it to the next day's agenda, you start to become increasingly aware that you're avoiding something.
Mm, mm.
But without having that specific activity, I think that it's very hard because you don't even recognize that you're doing it. You just sort of move away from it.
You're ringing the bell for me this morning. I literally yesterday I redid updated my task list, and I do that maybe not every day like you do it, but I do it probably once every 10 days. And I noticed on the two task lists that I have, my personal task list and my professional task list, there were several things, a couple things on each list that were carryovers and had been carried over now a couple of times. And so it just as soon as you start sharing that example, I'm like, "Oh, yeah. I'm right there with you." And I am avoiding those, and it's like, as you describe it, for me, it's like it takes some energy from me that it's still dangling. And it makes perfect sense, right? That if I just knock the damn thing out, that I would have some relief from that, and my day might even, loosen up and go in a much better way, but, hadn't thought about it from that perspective. Thank you.
So before we got on today, you were telling me about something that had recently come up in one of your sessions with a client. And I'm wondering if you can give us a teaser for the conversation that we're going to have next time.
Yeah, I had a delightful session with a coaching client that I've been with now for about a year and a half, and she's made just tremendous gains in her life. But I something popped into my head as I was talking with her, and I said to her, I said, "You have gone from being a savior in this world to being just a servant." And we laughed about that, and she laughed heartily. I think because it was a very true statement for her, and it made me then think about all the folks I've worked with that are in efforts over time, and how easily it is, because many of us in efforts are built to be servants of one kind or another in life, and that sometimes we take on too much. And we try to become saviors instead of the servants that we were built to be. So that's a teaser for next our next podcast recording, and hopefully it'll be interesting for you all. For today, I hope that we answered some of your questions, or maybe brought up new questions that'll be good for you to really toss around in your own mind and heart. Always give feedback, and ask questions. Let us know what you liked in the show today, and other questions that you might have where we could have answered additional questions.
All right, Dave, I appreciate you, and I look forward to next time.
Love you, brother. Bye bye.